Is that the quarter is the story of a bare-knuckle fighter from Boston. And start with the second chapter. I grew up like any other American kid. School, chores, cartoons, working-class parents. Except I was short and fat, and had nothing to say to any number of bullies who slouched around the housing project where my parents had been inconsiderate enough to raise me. My life was basically laid out and hopeless. No matter how good my grades were, I could never afford college. I was set to become a janitor or handyman or mechanic, and my best bet was to get a job working in some nice neighborhood outside the city, where I'd maybe stand to make a decent enough wage to put a down payment on some shitty house and live in debt the rest of my miserable life, raising my own slum kids and riding the hamster wheel of the American dream. There was an image I had, a dream sometimes, of myself sitting in a kitchen nodding into a newspaper, pushing reading glasses up my nose every 10 seconds, a cup of coffee growing cool on a Formica tabletop. I'd wake up from the dream in a cold sweat, clueless as to what had freaked me out, until I went into the kitchen for breakfast and saw my pops drowsing into a bowl of soup next to his newspaper, still wearing his night shift uniform with its aluminum flashlight and laminated badge. As soon as anyone discovered my father was an LBJ-worshipping rent-a-cop, I became a target. I was used to it. I had a half-dozen spots around the project grounds where I'd scuttle and hide whenever someone was after my yo-yo or lunch pail or whatever. I kept mostly to myself, avoiding the playground and other kids, reading library books and swiping candy bars from newsstands when I could. It was a rat's existence, and I look back on it with disgust, but at the time I didn't know any better. There was only one way to pull myself out for real. I had to get involved in something. When you have almost nothing, the one frivolous thing you own can mean the world. It can mean a peek into another existence where money is just part of getting dressed. One year for Christmas and my 11th birthday combined, my folks managed to scrape a few extra dollars to buy me a fancy new sled. I remember unwrapping the thing and dancing around the mudroom-sized family room like a chubby little gnome, feeling like a king. That little red sled was my be-all and end-all, with its razor-sharp runners and brand-new manila rope knotted through wood alongside the words, "Flexible Flyer." Pure magic. I wanted to ride that thing every minute of every day until everything else sort of faded away. Enter Mikey Stone, the ugly pimp who supervised the project, terrorizing the hundreds of resident families and swaggering around at the head of his little band like the sheriff of Nottingham. The son or nephew or cousin of someone with enough influence to get him the position, Mikey Stone regularly rifled through people's mail and purposely lost rent checks to collect late fees. Nobody ever did anything about it. We all lived in fear. I avoided him and his gang at all costs. The original founders would be disgusted to see what their Welcome Home Heroes VE Day housing project had rotted into after all the vets had made their way up in the world and moved out to the suburbs. It was a Tuesday, I remember. Everyone was still talking about Max McGee's unlikely performance in the NFL championship over the weekend. I'd cut school to play on the sled, bumping down ice-slick steps in front of the building under the kind of blue sky that makes you wonder if maybe everything will work out after all. I was lugging the sled back up the measly hill when Mikey Stone and his 4 goons hopped out of a Twinkie-colored Plymouth Duster and sauntered over. "That's a wicked nice sled, kid," whistled Mikey. His companions sniggered and pawed at each other, closing a circle around me. I nodded and kept my eyes on the ground, just kind of hoping they'd go away. "Can I try it?" He reached out a hand and flipped it a couple times. "Gimme, gimme." I looked up. His eyes were droopy and yellow. A jaundiced undershirt peeped out from his low-zipped Red Sox jacket, half hiding his silver chain winking in the sun. I hugged that sled and shook my head silently, wiping my nose on a mitten knit by some auntie. "No?" Mikey was incredulous. "Did he just say no, boys?" They nodded and laughed. Uh-oh. He stepped toward me, glaring down and wagging a finger in my face. "Listen to me, you little motherfucker," he growled with breath that would wilt sawgrass. "I was going to take it for a ride, but now I'm just going to take it. Give it here." I shook my head. "Get bent, bully," I imagined, screaming. I saw myself lifting the sled over my head and swinging with inhuman strength directly into his fat purple nightcrawler lips, standing over him and chopping the edge toward his neck like a guillotine again and again. Then, even at 11 years old, I chased after his motley gang and cleaned the streets of a few more petty hoods. Holy dreaming doofus, Batman. Instead, I just tightened my grip on the sled while Mikey and his thugs sneered and reached for it. Suddenly I was down, staring at the powder blue sky through a drifting galaxy of yellow sparks, ears ringing, temples throbbing. I hadn't even seen the fist coming. Hot coppery blood slid down my throat, and I gagged, tears brimming in my eyes. My face burned. The thugs laughed. My hands were empty. They'd torn the sled out of my grip and were passing it around the circle over my head. I will not cry. I will not give them the satisfaction. I will not let these rats get to me. They grabbed my arms. Two of them sat on my legs. Mikey stooped and unzipped my coat. He dug in a pocket and popped the switchblade. Then he grabbed a handful of my shirt and snarled with murder in his eyes. Don't you ever say no to me, boy. Not if you value your shitty little life. He slit my shirt and pulled it open, exposing my chest. Here's a little lesson, punk, he said. This is my turf. Anything on it belonged to me. Then he dropped trow and squatted. I watched his asshole twitch once or twice, then it bulged slightly and peeled slowly back around a glistening brown torpedo, squelching thin and squelching softly. Underneath, his nuts quivered. Then the shit thumped hot on my chest, including you. The thugs ran off. I sat up and spat blood. The turd clung for a second before tumbling into my lap, leaving streaks on my stomach as I watched them skip and hoot, honking the horn as the duster skidded down the road. I broke a tooth, grinding my jaw. Believe it or not, I moved on. No sense wallowing. When you're a slug, you can't do anything against the folks who come pluck you up and fling you around for sport. And so you get used to the abuse and learn to take it with a grain of salt, which makes it that much worse for the slug. The following fall, newly 12, I took a job as assistant janitor at an apartment complex on the Fenway. How expected. My job was to run around with a nail-embedded broom handle, spearing bits of garbage, which I did for a whole year before graduating to gathering the piles of filled trash bags around the grounds, hauling them to a pickup which carried them to the dump. Another year of that, they finally told me I'd be driving the truck once I got my license at 16. And I was supposed to be grateful and proud. More pennies and more respect in the custodial world. Instead, I was thinking, 2 more years of this, maybe just kill me now. But that was the job. There was nothing I could do about my life without some savings. So I plugged on and pretended to be optimistic about the labor. Now and then an illegal Mexican or Salvadoran or Puerto Rican or whatever would hitch a ride in the garbage truck and stick around to work on some painting or laying new linoleum to replace squares loosened to hide junky stashes. They'd probably make more money if they went around ripping up the rest of the floor, selling whatever treasures they found buried there, but somehow they're too honest. I didn't know any Spanish and I never much trusted anyone anyway, so they were all just faceless migrant workers. Which meant I thought nothing of it when one day a truck pulled up with a dude in a sweatshirt sitting in the bed. I was carrying 4 trash bags, holding them arms straight out, loving the way my sweatshirt stretched taut against my trembling muscles, and how the cotton pulled against the 5 or 8 chest hairs I'd been cultivating. For months I'd been making a game out of work, hoisting the trash bags like dumbbells, and after hours of such work, muscles turn to cables and skin turns to leather. I felt the job turning me into something hard and functional, and I liked that. Since the day I lost my sled, I'd been ripping push-ups at a rate of dozens a day, trying to push out the memory-burned image of Mikey Stone by focusing my anger and exhausting my rage. I was sick of being the fat kid, the quiet, acquiescing victim of any bully. A growth spurt this summer had left me bigger than a lot of the other 14-year-olds, and I worked to stay on top of that. Never again would I face the humiliation and disgrace of bowing before a power greater than my own. I couldn't afford a weight set, but I had scooped a weight bench from the garage sale. With a bag of concrete from the construction site down the block and some buckets, I made barbells with a pair of mop handles. I spent all my free time in the maintenance shed on that cracked vinyl, relishing the shh of my sweaty back peeling off as I sat up, breathing in the cold machine smell. I dreamt in rhythmic clinking and took bodybuilder books from the library to improve my technique. As the calluses on my palm grew and my anger hardened into something calm and virulent, and I tucked it into the pit of my stomach where it sat and waited. I could feel it behind my belly button when I looked in the mirror, finally approving of the scowling figure I saw there. I could feel it when I mumbled, "Yes, sir," "No, sir," to my bosses. I could feel it when Grandpa, in a rare moment of vigor and clarity, scolded and slapped me for letting my grades slip. "That ain't my problem, it's yours, but you get your grades back up." I could feel it when I played King of the Hill with neighborhood kids until my knees were oozing and bubbly with filthy scrapes, and I was finally standing alone at the top. I could feel it all the time. It had been ages since Mikey Stone had left the projects for grimier pastures, but I still thought about him every day as I let my anger use my body to push its muscles past the limit. I thought about wrapping my arm around his throat and cranked a few more curls. I thought about shoving him through windows and pushed a few more presses. I thought about stomping his face under my work boots and gritted out a few more squats. Between lifting weights and work, I kept myself distracted and mostly out of trouble, but again, I began feeling a powerful wanderlust. There was no way I could stomach this minimum wage job much longer. I needed to get out of the projects and into the world, even if that meant something like loan sharking. "Hey, Paulie, this guy's here to meet the new manager about a job." I nodded and barely glanced up, thinking mostly about my count. 45, 46, 47. My record was a minute with 4 full bags outstretched. But something familiar about the guy made me stop and look again. Those lips flapping in the breeze, the hint of a sneer hooking his wide nose, the thick low forehead. I froze. Mikey Stone, with no goons. I dropped the bags and lunged toward the truck which had brought me such a nice gift. I leapt up on the tailgate and grabbed him by the collar. His surprise changed to fear as I wrenched him toward the edge. He recognized me. "Remember me, motherfucker?" I hissed. I hopped down from the truck, pulling Mikey along by the sweatshirt. Then I yanked him off and rocked my leg up, slapping his face around my knee like a pumpkin. He collapsed and sprawled, unmoving for a moment, and I stood waiting. He pulled himself to his knees and stood woozily, reaching in his pocket for a knife. No way. It's my turn now. And I'm on him, throwing my entire weight behind a right cross, which connects crack on his chin. He stumbles back, and I swing around with my left, smashing my fist into his temple. He drops to the sidewalk. The switchblade clatters across the pavement. I'm on him, fists flailing, red mist rising before my eyes. "Die, you worm piece of shit!" My fist again and again, socking wet and hard into his ugly brown face, drawing back and throwing myself down again and again. Fists, elbows, fist, 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 blood spraying, teeth bared, screaming, venting, "Die!" as the accumulation of my hatred toward him boils over, and all the anger of feeling helpless takes control. The back of his head cracks and spills red on the pavement. Wide, wet eyes cross, lose focus. Arms fall to the draw of gravity as his body gives up. And still I'm on him, thrashing and flailing and mashing his face again and again with raw knuckles, elbows, bleeding, breath ragged. "Die, die, die," as he goes limp beneath me. My knees soaked through with hot blood, heart thumping, fist pumping, rage shrieking, and spit flecking into his unseen eyes, and his head cracking against the pavement. I'm on him, and my fists take a life on their own, lips splitting, teeth flying, tongue bitten through, skin torn and bruised, losing shape. Just die, a mass of blood and cells and follicles of a bully who chose the wrong victim with infinite patience and unceasing hatred. I was panting and exhausted when I finally got up. The driver of the pickup stared agape, and I leveled a glare at him. "What the fuck you looking at?" He shook his head and drove off. It was time for me to go. Thanks for coming.